Hello again, friends, and welcome to another live episode of Syracuse Sports. Brent X, Chris Carlson, as we get into the last week of training camp. Before you know it, Syracuse is going to shift gears and put its full focus on its opener against Ohio on August 31st, but they're not quite there yet. Couple more days of training camp before they can do that, and we're here to give you the latest. And, of course, we will do our best, Siskel and Ebert here, and review what I thought was a very nice episode of All Access, despite
well, of
a
course
flaw.
Of course you think so.
Yes.
You were in it.
We'll get to this. A little screen time for the syracuse.com crew, at least 2 out of 3 of us. Anyway.
What the heck?
And also, I enjoyed the episode despite a very disturbing thing I learned about Kyle McCord during this episode. Nobody's perfect, all right? It's been since Kyle got here, Chris, it's been nothing but accolades, right? Nothing but praise. And
had to be something wrong with him.
There had to be something wrong with Kyle McCord, and we have found that out before they play a down of football. Chris actually had a chance to talk to Kyle after practice today, so we'll get some highlights of that. And I'm going to play a couple of sound bites as well. We caught up with Coach Fran Brown today and wide receiver coach and passing game coordinator Ross Douglas with a couple interesting things to say as well. In terms of football, now we actually saw a couple of highlights from scrimmage play. Trevor Pena made a nice touchdown catch. Zeed Haynes, kind of that nice leaner in the corner of the end zone from the ACC All-Access show. We got a little look at that, and we continue to hear good things about those guys. And Chris, I'll kind of start there because we've heard a lot about Zeed and how he's been burning people at practice. I asked Coach Douglas about that today. Trevor Pena, I think, has kind of fallen by the wayside in the discussion here, and I don't think he should because he's going to get passes from Kyle McCord. He's a safety valve, and we got a little look at special teams play today, and he's going to be actively involved in that as he has been at Syracuse when he's been healthy. So just in case you forgot about Trevor Pena, don't, because that's a name we're going to hear a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, when he got hurt last year, the staff really felt like that hurt them, and really hampered their passing game. They felt they lost both option 1 with Aronde Gadsden and option 2 in Trevor Pena on that team. That's how much they viewed him as sort of a chain mover, how useful they felt he would be as a slot receiver. So Fran Brown has certainly... Right, he certainly overhauled the wide receiver room. He certainly brought in more options. But Trevor was looked at as that talented last year. And, I mean, right, we all get real excited about Dan Villari and his potential as a pass catcher. We haven't seen him really do it as a pass catcher. We saw him do it as a quarterback and a running back last year. Trevor's the guy whose sort of hands we've seen more that could be sort of that chain mover, short yardage guy. So, yeah, I'm fully on board on the don't forget Trevor, train. I think he's going to make plays this year.
You mentioned Dan Villari. We should note he was out of the black jersey. Now, he's been practicing all along here, but black jersey means no contact. That means they're taking a little extra precaution with that. He was in the normal practice jersey today, so we've been assured all along nothing was seriously wrong with Dan. It was just, precautionary, but he was out of the jersey today. Justice Ross Simmons was off the bike. Now, if you're on the bike on the side of practice, that means you're not practicing, but they still want you to do some physical activity, right? Guys that are rehabbing, that are working back from injuries. Justice Ross Simmons not on the bike today, so he was back at practice. But a second notable injury to note here for practice. So Braylon Ingram is a player we know is out for the season. We found out today it was on the bikes and at practice and has been on the bikes for the past few days. But Fran Brown confirming today that Marcus Washington Jr., remember the transfer comes in from Louisville. Fran Brown has recruited him and knows him and wanted to try and integrate him on this team in the secondary. He has a bicep injury, and Chris, Fran described it as out for a few months. That's essentially the season, right? I mean, those things will probably time out, that we're not going to see Marcus Washington Jr. out there. A lot of our Syracuse Sports Insiders were asking about that today, and we would love for you to become a Syracuse Sports Insider today. It's right there on your screen if you're watching. But for those of you maybe just listening, just text the word orange to 315-847-3895 to send me direct text messages. I send you direct text messages, and you can ask about Syracuse football anytime you want. Our Syracuse Sports Insiders, Chris, were asking today about, they were hearing about an injury. We were hearing about an injury, and as it turned out, it was Marcus Washington Jr. So knock on wood, and I'll do that for you guys. Here it is, August 19th. We're in the last week of camp, and Syracuse has had 2 injuries that we know of for players out, a couple of bumps and bruises, like we mentioned, the guys on the bike and Villari, but relatively healthy, as Fran noted and confirmed for us today. They've got pretty much a full roster here going into the last week of camp.
Yeah, thank you very much to your insiders for making sure we were asking the right questions
Absolutely.
today. That is very helpful. Fran was very complimentary of Marcus, sort of as in discussing the injury. Said he was working his way up towards second string, or was getting some reps with the second unit. You mentioned he played at Louisville last year. He started with Fran at Georgia, so clearly was a coveted kid coming out of high school. And, the timeline Fran said was 3 months, and said, well, we plan on playing deep into the season, but if you've been out, you're not coming back for meaningful snaps 3 months into the year after being away for the team for that long. So I understand wanting to keep that flame of hope going for the kid. Yeah. It'll make passing the time a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, 2 injuries, both depth chart maybe guys, potential contributors, but no frontline starters hurt yet. Justice Ross Simmons missing time because he's been on the bike for a lot. That can't be super helpful in terms of him fitting in to that wide receiver room right away and developing chemistry with Kyle McCord. But you don't get out of the spring you don't get out of training camp usually too much healthier than kind of where they're at. They've had a couple and sort of meaningful but not huge injuries.
Yeah, Justice Ross Simmons dealing with a hamstring injury. There was a shot in ACC All-Access of Kyle working with the receivers after practice on some red zone stuff and some corners, and you saw a little bit of everybody. Meeks, Haynes, Umari Hatcher was in there, Darrell Gill Jr. was in there, but Justice Ross Simmons still working his way back from that injury, but was back at practice today, so he'll get back in the flow of things. In terms of practice today, we didn't see much. Today was a light day for this team. After the scrimmage, Fran saying after practice that they've been very physical through camp. He wanted to give these guys a little bit of a breather. So no pads today. Practice was only an hour. We were only in there for about 10 minutes. And, we always used to complain back in the day. Some coaches would only let us watch sprints and stretching, and then we'd be escorted out. It was that kind of day because there really wasn't much to watch. We did see a little bit of special teams play at the end, so not too much to take from practice today. In terms of the scrimmage, Fran, when we was asked about it afterwards today, Chris, wanted to focus on some of the younger guys that stood out to him. Here's what he said.
Really the same guys. Those to them the same way. They did a good job. Let me see what young guys did something else. A couple of running backs, some young running backs did really impressed me. Malachi James got out again. He got it once he breaks. It's hard to catch him. He did a good job. Hart did a good job. So the younger backs really stepped up this week. We gave them a lot. They've done a lot of stuff. And Jamie Trouble. Yeah, Jamie had some big plays. He scored, I think, once or twice. So Jamie did a good job. He stepped up. I think he's going to play on a lot of teams, too. He'll be a starter on some special teams. So, that guy's a lot of them that send up. Our freshmen did it. They starting to step up. They're starting to get acclimated and get more comfortable, being here. So we're very thankful for those guys.
Notable there, Jamie Tremble's a guy we've heard a lot about. He's in a deep tight end room, of course, with OG and Dan Villari ahead of him, but he's knocking on the door. And Chris, that ticket to get on the field is special teams. And Fran wants to put some of his better guys on special teams, and it feels like young Jamie Trimble's got a path there to get on the field. Emily Leiker, star of All-Access tonight, did talk to Jamie afterwards, so we'll hear more about that going forward here. But it just goes to show you, I saw a ranking floating around the internet today. I think it was actually our guy David Hale we might have to give him some demerits, Chris, because I think he had the Syracuse tight end room ranked as like 9th or 10th in the ACC. That's like, whoa, time out there, buddy. That's clearly a top 5 tight end room in the ACC, at least in my humble opinion. And we got a guy like Trembles knocking on the door. It shows you the future's bright.
Yeah, I mean, you just start, right? You start with a guy who has to be either tight end 1 or tight end 2 in the ACC. I mean, that's a great start. And then it seems like we've got pretty good depth. Now there's a fall off, right? There's certainly a fall off from OG to Dan and Max Mang, who we've heard is going to be sort of a blocking, probably tight end this year. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't get that tight end room sort of being that low. Fran's got a good pitch for guys on special teams. In terms of the pitches, if you're not a top first or second round NFL draft pick, like, you're going to be playing special teams in the league. So get used to it. And, that's going to help you make your living someday. A lot of the stuff Fran talks about in terms of goals being aligned between the program and the player is guys who want to make it to the NFL and believing that Fran's the guy to get them there. And that's like sort of one piece of how that helps.
Also asked Fran today, with this being the last week of camp, when do you flip the switch and put all sights on Ohio?
That's like a secret. If I tell you my secrets, then it ain't a secret no more. But just know, we know they're a very good football team. Yeah, their coach is a really good football coach, was offensive coordinator for a while. And I'm just thankful that I get the opportunity to compete against that guy. And I mean, they did a great job last year. They've been dominating their conference. So just thankful we get the opportunity to go against them. But I will get to them when the time comes next week. But I'm very thankful we get the chance to compete against them.
Now, they've sort of been thinking about Ohio throughout camp, Chris, but, Fran even brought this up today. You start game week and classes start. And, when you're younger guys, you're freshmen, they're getting used to campus life and college life. Certainly the parking lot in front of the facility was busier today. All the freshmen moving in, like, it's starting to happen, right? They've been so focused on football that college life starts to come in. So when you have a couple extra days to game plan for your opponent, Fran didn't want to give it away. But typically, like that Thursday, you start locking in on that first opponent because early in the week, things tend to, distraction. I don't mean this in, it is a distraction, but it's funny to say because you're a student athlete. It's supposed to be college, right? But when you've been used to just football, and all of a sudden, you got to get used to going back to classes. That takes a day or two to acclimate to that. Meanwhile, you're getting ready for your first game. So they'll probably start locking in Thursday, Friday, get some early game film in, some early game planning in, and then lock it in for Saturday, the 31st. We're about 12 days away from the start of the season here.
Yeah, why not give yourself a couple days of extra preparation,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you have all the time you want right now. One other thing, I don't know if you're going to play the clip, and hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder on this, Brent, but music to Syracuse fans' ears, I think. When Fran talked about the scrimmage a little bit over the weekend, the other improvement, he said, not very many penalties. They were much better in terms of penalties. Talked about, there were only a few instances of them. One was 2 players sort of getting after each other, and Fran said they made them hold hands and walk off the field to sort of settle that situation down. But
well, listen,
he was happy that with the lack of flags for a scrimmage.
This was the most penalized team in the country 2 years ago.
Yep.
And in 2023, last season, I think there were only 6 or 7 teams that had more penalties than Syracuse. Discipline was a major issue under Dino Babers. It never improved to the level it needed to, especially down the stretch. And look, you had a lot of injuries, and it's hard to build consistency and keep the penalties down when you've got a constant influx of players coming in, to be fair. But we just saw it in too many situations, even when the team was healthy, right? There's just, the discipline was just not something that Dino could get a hold of, and it's something that Fran has to get a hold of quickly here with this team if you want to kind of shed the ghosts of the past and exercise some things that led to the coaching change. It starts there. So that was certainly an encouraging note there. I do have a couple clips I wanted to play as well from Ross Douglas, the Syracuse wide receiver coach and passing game coordinator. Remember, came to Syracuse from the New England Patriots, but worked with Fran at Rutgers. They've crossed paths. They've known each other well. They compete hard at practice, with Ross being the wide receivers coach and Fran, of course, spending so much time with the defensive backs. And he actually talked about that today, how competition has really helped these two get better as coaches. But, yeah, there's a little smack talk.
Me and Coach Fran, it goes back to when we were at Rutgers together. I was his GA, so we'd always compete with each other every day. And now that I'm back here, naturally he coaches the defensive backs. I coach wideouts, so it's a natural competition every day. But I'm blessed to go against him. I think he's the best defensive back coach in the country, so I know I got to bring my A game every single day. Otherwise, we're not going to have a good day that day. So, but now it's been good competition between all the wideouts and defensive backs. So I'm just looking forward to that because iron sharpens iron. So when we continue to compete like that, we'll be ready to go on Saturdays.
We've heard so much about Zeed Haynes. There's another name that stuck out today, by the way, Chris, that I want to throw in there in the secondary, but we've heard so much about Zeed Haynes. So I had to ask the wide receivers coach what he's been seeing from this game.
I think Zeed is a young ascending player. He's fast, he's quick, he has good ball skills. Everything that makes a good receiver, he has all those qualities. So it's been good competition between him and all the defensive backs.
The defensive back that's standing out, Chris, we've heard a lot of Zeed, but when it hasn't even been a specific question about this, that unit or things that would lead you to this name. It's just been general statements. Clarence Lewis, the Notre Dame transfer, is starting to pop, and a few players and a few coaches have just either asked directly or not said his name. So, and of course, Ross was asked about, which guys in the secondary are giving you headaches. And, he wanted to be diplomatic about it, and coaches try to say as many names as they can in these situations, but you can tell who's top of mind. And Clarence Lewis, that's another name that I would mark down as somebody that's starting to stand out in camp and has been a pretty good addition to that secondary.
Yeah, he's one of those transfers that comes from a big name program. Fran brought in a lot of guys with physical tools. Those are guys that generally get coveted by big name programs, but he's played more than most of them. Like, he had a starting role for Notre Dame. He has experience playing at a big time level and won jobs early in his career at Notre Dame. So I think he's certainly somebody that as a staff, you'd want to step up late in camp because he has experience. He's not a guy who you're just like, well, let's see how this goes. He's done it before.
He also mentioned Marcellus Barnes Jr. as a name that's given them a lot of headaches in terms of defensive players, and a theme that's developed with him, Chris, even though he's the youngest guy in the room. So Ross said this, and last week, trying to think off the top of my head, I think it was actually Joe Schaefer, the defensive backs coach, that said how mature Barnes is. What Ross said today was he's 16 going on 34, right? So you have the secondary coach, you have the wide receivers coach that both know this kid's getting on the field, not only because he's making plays, but he is aged beyond his years, if you will. He is wise beyond his years and knows the game, and that's important. For freshmen to get out there, talent is one thing, but you have to know what to do when you're on the field, and it just feels like Barnes is impressing in that department as well. I wanted to play one more clip here from Ross Douglas, and Chris, we brought up earlier that you don't want to forget about Trevor Pena. You also don't want to forget about the leading receiver coming back from last year's roster in terms of yards. Now, look, Zeed Haynes and Jackson Meeks, OG's return, new faces combined with big-time talents that are returning from injury, right? Justice Ross Simmons, new face in the room. There's a lot of people to get to know and that people are excited about. But Omari Hatcher, I wanted to know about him. Here's what Ross said about what he's been doing.
Yeah, I see him as, he played a lot of football last year. He was out for about half the spring. Now he's back. He's kind of got it back into the swing of things. But very positive camp so far. I like working with him again. He just adds to the competition. He helps our room grow.
And with Justice Ross Simmons, you brought it up earlier, Chris, it slowed a little bit. He's been out of reps for about a week or so. Hatcher's going to play. He's a leader in that room. He's somebody that comes back from last year. Ross brought up the injury he had to battle back from, but he's fully healthy now. And yeah, Zeed is exciting people, and Meeks is exciting people, and OG, but Hatcher's going to get on that field, and he's somebody that, could be, I don't want to say a secret weapon. That's not the right way to put it, but you lose track of him. He can get open and give Kyle McCord yet another target.
Yeah, he's fast, he's big, he's a real good deep threat in that way. And we don't get to see a ton during our time, but he's made plays like when we've been there. You know, he has been one of the wide receivers that we've seen make plays, usually with Michael Johnson Jr. and usually with the second team. But he's a guy that has jumped out from what we have seen. So, you know, good. Sounds like it is continuing when we're not in the building.
We did, and by we, I mean Emily in this case, did ask for an update on the backup quarterback situation. Fran's trying not to show his cards on this. And he did say that Michael Johnson Jr., you just said the name, which reminded me to ask about it. And Carlos Del Rio Wilson, he didn't really indicate who's jumping out in that competition. I am getting the sense that Michael Johnson Jr. has taken the lead. He did say both of those two pulled away from Jakari Williams, which you would expect, of course, with Jakari being a freshman. I think there might be an or on the depth chart, but I think Michael Johnson Jr. is the backup quarterback on this team. I'm getting a sense that Fran's way of kind of distributing credit in that room is they're going to compete all year. And he doesn't want to put a rubber stamp on it at this point. But if I had to put my money on it, I think MJ Jr. took that job.
Yeah, I mean, Fran has been great this preseason in terms of giving anecdotes about sharing like the honest conversations that it takes to get players to Syracuse these days. We can't ask a ton more from him in terms of sharing. The one place he doesn't like to go is sort of depth chart stuff because he doesn't want anybody to let up because they think they're ahead of the next guy. It is the one thing that we wish we could get him to give us a little bit more on, but he doesn't. But it makes sense.
He's a football coach.
You can't blame a guy for doing what's right for him, right? But yeah, today he mentioned that Michael Johnson Jr. probably had a better day than Carlos Del Rio Wilson, but then was like, wow, but Carlos might come back and have a better day tomorrow. We're not going to shut down the competition. And sure, that's true, but like they can't, how much competing can they do once the season starts and they're preparing for the next opponent, right? I mean, maybe some, but you've got to figure, you've got to, there's only going to be so many reps once the season starts for the number 2 and the number 3 quarterback. And I'm with you. I get the vibe just that Michael Johnson Jr. is probably the guy to start the year.
All right, Chris, we're going to put our Siskel and Eber hats on here. ACC All-Access, Episode 2. I guess spoiler alert if you haven't seen it yet. It was on tonight. If it's in your DVR or something, I guess I'll throw the spoiler alert out there, but for a lot of people listen to the pod later on here. So for those of you that are joining us live, sorry if you haven't seen it yet, but I really enjoyed this episode, and not just because I had a speaking part in it. So right at the beginning, Emily Liker, shout out to Emily, and people, hey, where's Emily? Why is she not on the pod tonight? Well, we're just mixing it up, and Emily is working on something for you guys that you're really going to enjoy. Spoiler alert, I will not spoil it here on the podcast, but it's coming soon, and you guys will really enjoy this. And she's buttoning that down here, a couple of things that we're really excited for you to see and read about. So that's why Emily's not on the pod tonight. But she got a speaking part and on camera right at the beginning, question about how the players have been living in the dorms, which they're no longer doing, by the way. They're in their normal residences, if they will, but they lived in the same dorm for the first few weeks of camp. And then I asked Kyle McCord about that off camera. Chris, I think you got a little screen time in the press conference room, but in order to be paid by the Screen Actors Guild, you need a speaking part. So not yet, buddy, but I think you're going to get there soon.
Going to have a conversation with some of those ACC network producers and see if they can take care of me by the end of the season.
The residual checks from that, baby. Oh, I can retire.
I really liked the... we could have like multiple buddy comedies from this Syracuse team. We could have the Justin Barron, Kyle McCord, little trash talking, little humility from them on the golf course. And then the Brady Denneberg, Jack Stonehouse handshakes, 70 different handshakes for pretty much every guy on the team. That's
I didn't remember all that.
Well,
they're smart guys.
Yeah, and they go out, I'm going to get myself in trouble with all the special teams, with all the former punters that Syracuse has, right? but you go out, you get your work done, but you can't kick for 2 hours straight. Like,
yes.
you can't, as a kicker, work out for 2 hours straight.
So Justin Barron and Kyle McCord golf that shout out Tuscarora, great local golf course here in central New York. I used to be a member there, as a matter of fact, so highly recommend it if you ever want to stop in and play a great course in central New York and you know somebody there that can get you on. And then when we were at practice and Kyle was talking to you, Chris, Justin Barron kind of came over while Kyle was talking and kind of leaned his head on his shoulder, and Kyle was like, "What is going on?" And he looked like, "Oh, it's you." Like you could tell, like there's a rapport there between those two. Golf wise, they had a rough day. I would say. I love it.
They're better than me, but that
Yes.
is not saying much.
That's exactly that. I love that they put like they had like the almost PGA like scoreboard up there. Justin Barron +6, Kyle McCord +6. That was
Now,
fun.
if that's true, they were playing bogey golf almost, which is not.
I wonder what hole that was on. I have to go back and look at
It was
what hole.
early.
Yeah, if you're +6 on the front nine, you're
It was
struggling
like on
with it.
5.
But Chris,
6 or 5.
you don't want your quarterback and your defensive captain that good at golf right now, right? You want them locked in on football. So that's probably a good thing. We did learn something about Kyle McCord tonight. I knew there was something wrong with this guy. He's never seen Star Wars.
Or Marvel.
Marvel, I don't care so much about. I'm not a big Marvel guy, but I have seen some of the Marvel movies. And Kyle, I think he was joking when he was like, I never watched any of that stuff. I was just watching film. Right? I don't know if he was like in a Todd Marinovich situation where he wasn't allowed to have fun as a kid. He was just watching film. But there's time.
We're gonna have to ask and see exactly how serious the quarterback training. Like, was it like a Soviet quarterback development situation that has prepared him for this moment?
It's okay. Nobody's perfect, Kyle. There is time for you to fix this mistake slowly but surely. In the off season, we'll let you lock in on football right now, but we need to correct this mistake. So both Emily and I texted each other immediately when that happened. Like, what? How is he not watched? Oh my God. So that was fun. They also featured prominently. Uncle Brent's been telling you, Yassine Willis, guys, get on board, get on the train. Great interview with him. Fran saying that LaQuinn Allen, who they also feature prominently, and Yassine going to be a 1-2 punch, thunder and lightning for you New York Giants fans, and that reference in the past. But that kind of led into, you knew at some point, Chris, they had to talk about the history of the running backs. And LaQuinn had a great soundbite when they walked through the statues, right? And Floyd Little, Jim Brown, Ernie Davis, and the statues. And they showed a clip of the team watch The Express. So, guys, just in case you haven't watched this movie about this legendary Heisman Trophy winner, the first African-American Heisman Trophy winner, or maybe you've heard the name, guys, but just in case you're not really familiar, they made a movie about this guy, and we're going to watch it together here. Fran also saying, I'm not worthy to give away the 44, but recognizing what it means to Syracuse football, right? So I don't think we're going to see that number doled out anytime soon for those of you wishing to see it back out there. I was almost... Chris, for a moment, I was like, oh, wait, what are they going to say? They're going to put the 44 back out there? I thought like they were building up to that, but no, pretty status quo at this point. But I think we knew the 44 would be emphasized at some point, but I really like the way that they did it.
Yeah, it was a really cool way to sort of show young players who have probably heard about the history, sort of know it, but like, maybe don't grasp just the enormity of what Ernie Davis, did and experienced, and the human, in addition to being right a great football player that played at Syracuse, like the human component of what he did, because the movie certainly does a great job illustrating that, and Syracuse football players and all of us should take time to think about that every once in a while.
They showed Fran at his son Braden's Pop Warner practice, had his daughter Ivy, who just celebrated her birthday, by the way. Happy birthday, Ivy. And it was a little bit of Fran, the family man, out on a beautiful summer night at Pop Warner practice, and he's pushing his daughter on the swing, and he was talking about the importance of family and what it means to him. And then that kind of led into, with his son at his side, Fran doing bed checks. And kind of harping back to, I did this when I was a graduate assistant, right? Ross Douglas talking about how he was a GA at Rutgers, and that's where you start and you work your way up in that grunt work. But the head coach knocking on doors, looking in dorm rooms. Hey, you guys got to take the garbage out. What's going on here now? Look, I don't think they do things just for the cameras, but it made for a nice camera moment for this team, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
we got a fire alarm going off in the Carlson.
We got a smoke alarm. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't know.
These things happen.
Yep, it looks like it's paused. All right. The house.
Okay.
The house.
Replace that
intact.
battery, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very good.
The one. I think this has been like a theme for Syracuse football under Fran, and it's a really good one. And Kyle McCord, I talked to him a little bit about this today. Like, no player is sort of, or nobody on the team is like above anything, right? Like Fran is not above doing bed checks. And when Kyle leads, Kyle did not come in here and like start barking orders and correcting people. Like, Kyle worked out in the weight room and went through their off-season training before he tried to like really tell people what to do. And I think there are just a lot of really good examples of leadership where people are like doing more than, in addition to saying, right? You should never be telling people to do something that you wouldn't do yourself. And there are a lot of examples under Fran Brown where like we've seen that, I think. And this was another really good one. And nicely illustrated by the ACC Network folks.
And I mentioned a couple of things football-wise. Nice throw to Trevor Pena, nice throw to Zeke Haynes, just, to remind you here, this is what these guys can do. A little bit of scrimmage work, and then the extra work that Kyle put in with the wide receivers, a little football note to kind of take you into what will be, so they're going to do a total of 3 episodes. Next week will be the last episode, setting up the first week against Ohio and the end of camp. But all in all, Chris, I like this more than the first episode. Not that I like the first episode. I like the things that they showed and the shoe burning ceremony. They just have more material to work with now that they've been around for a couple of weeks. And I like the mix of football, family, behind the scenes, seeing things and going places we normally don't get to go, seeing things behind the curtain a little bit. Man, I felt that pain when McCord missed that putt that lipped out. Jeez, come on. That was brutal. Those greens at Tuscarora get you, man.
I enjoyed LeQuint's personality.
That was good too.
And that the 3 ice cream order where he'd ordered 2 and he's like, should I get this 3rd ice cream at the ice cream truck? Yeah, you know what? While it's here, I'm going to get the 3rd ice cream. I thought that was fun. LeQuint is a really joyful, person. I think that's why I ended up at the podium a lot last season when things got hard, because he was just like still happy to be there, still thrilled to be playing. And you sort of saw that side of him come out.
Always clutch. I don't want to give people free advertising, but there is a local company around Syracuse where you can do just that. You can rent the ice cream truck and it shows up to your party. That's always clutch, man. Like, because we're at the end of it now, but summertime, like graduation party season, that's how you step up at the graduation parties, right? You've got your own ice cream truck there. You got the live band there. Like, if you really go all out there, like you got your own ice cream truck. Like, that's clutch, man. Just go up to the truck and get what you want. Like that. Come on. What's better than that? So great move on a hot day, bringing the ice cream truck. And yeah, LeQuint was a big fan of that. What's your go-to at the ice cream truck, Chris? It used to be when I was a kid, it was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle that had the gumball eyes.
Yep.
But now it's just Chipwich, man.
Ooh, the
Can't go wrong with the Chipwich.
The Chipwich is a good one. I like the strawberry shortcake, the old-fashioned little strawberry shortcake. I like the Chipwich. Sometimes we've got the Oreo cookie sandwich. And I occasionally go for like they've got the the frozen candy bar, like the Snickers ice cream bar. Those are probably the 4.
All great orders. Yeah, that strawberry shortcake, man. That was like this. That's what I got in school. Like that was the ice cream you bought in school, and I see it at Wegmans. That you can buy those, and I got to stop walking by those and just. Because I'll usually grab like a Klondike bar or something this time of year, but I got to go back to those. Those are clutch, man. For sure.
I get them a little too often. My doctor my doctor does not approve, but they're good.
Is that what LeQuint ordered?
You can't get them.
Is that what LeQuint got? One of the strawberry shortcake things, or
I don't think that's what he got. No, he did get something with strawberry, but I don't think it was the strawberry shortcake.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully at one of these remaining practices, the ice cream man will be there and you can invite your friendly local media to come over and grab a chipwich, but we shall see. Chris, great job. Appreciate you hanging in here on the pod. Chris and I will be back tomorrow night. We've got another practice tomorrow and scheduled to speak with tomorrow, Tuesday. Oh, boy. I forgot, Chris, who tomorrow is. Ross Douglas was today. Tomorrow is Nick Williams. Nick Williams, Syracuse edge coach, who, if you go to a practice, just listen for a minute, and that's a voice you're going to hear right away. That is a voice that booms over practice, and we'll get his perspective on how things are going on. Fidel Diggs is certainly somebody that has stood out at that position, but what he sees from the Syracuse defense and some defensive players that we'll get to chat with tomorrow as well. So we'll be doing that. And then Friday is the last practice, player availability, coaching availability. That's when we'll talk to Dale Williams, the offensive line coach, before we lock in, and it's game week. It's almost here, baby. So a couple more of these training camp podcasts to bring you. We thank you for tuning into these either live or on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Would encourage you to become a Syracuse Sports Insider at 315-847-3895. Text me your questions, your comments, what you want Chris, Emily, and I to ask the players and coaches, what you want to know about. As Chris brought up earlier, you got a lot of you guys like, hey, what's going on? We heard there's a player out. Can you get us some info on that? You helped us go down the road we needed to ask the questions and get to the bottom of that. So goes both ways, folks. Becoming a Syracuse Sports Insider, there's no better time to do it than now, with training camp here in the season just around the corner, 12 days away from the start of the season against Ohio. So big shout out and thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. You can try it free for 2 weeks, and it's just $3.99 a month after that. So Chris and I will be back tomorrow after practice. In the meantime, thanks for hanging with us on Syracuse Sports. We'll talk to you next time, guys.